There is no ceasefire. Ceasefire is a joke. Because of that epistemic zalzal, epistemic earthquake, we are now at the threshold of new thinking. What they did in Holocaust was not unique. Before that, they had done this in Africa, in what is today Namibia.
Actually, in the book, we find that you put a spotlight on a zilzal and earthquake, but in the phase of epistemical zilzal, means that what happened now in Gaza has roots in the history of colonialism. Could you please explain us more about that?
Bravo, that's an excellent question. My sense, Osman, is that this event, this Palestinian genocide, what we have witnessed over 2 years, there is no ceasefire. Ceasefire is a joke. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed since the so-called ceasefire. Is not just, first of all, that the West helped Israel do it. Israel has done it on behalf of the West. There is no separation between Israel and the West. This is Western savagery that has existed throughout history, from the time of the colonial conquest of the Americas, transatlantic slavery, etc., that we need to come to terms with. Specifically about Germany, they say that the German support for Israel is in part because of the German guilt of what happened during the Holocaust. My argument is, in fact, the opposite. What has happened and is happening in Palestine is the extension, is the continuation of what the Germans did during the Holocaust. And what they did in Holocaust was not unique. Before that, they had done this in Africa, in what is today Namibia. So we need to put the German atrocities and genocide in Africa, in Namibia in particular, before they committed the genocide during the Jewish Holocaust. Plus that Holocaust, plus the events of Gaza, in order for us to have a bigger picture. And once we come up with that bigger picture, we reach to what you rightly call an epistemic earthquake. Namely, the West lacks any moral authority. For example, last week when Mohammed bin Salman was here, the New York Times wrote an editorial about why President Trump did not regard the fact that Jamal Khashoggi was killed by order of Mohammed bin Salman. I wrote a piece and I said, excuse me, hundreds of Palestinian journalists have been killed by Israel and there is no outrage. And in fact, what New York Times does is precisely what the security apparatus of Saudi Arabia presumably has done in order to exonerate Mohammed bin Salman. The point is, because of that epistemic zalzal, epistemic earthquake, we are now at the threshold of new thinking of how do we account for our humanity? Who is the person who thinks? And who is the person that we're talking to? Right now, I'm talking to you, Osman, and through you, I'm talking to your audience. And through your audience, I'm talking to the larger Arab and Muslim world, meaning people of my own belonging, people to whom I belong. But by extension, I also talk to people in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. By the same extension, I talk to the so-called minorities in Europe and in the United States and in Australia. Just this heroism of Ahmad Al-Ahmad in Sydney, who saved countless human lives, and the disgusting Benjamin Netanyahu goes and says he's Jewish. He's a Syrian from Idlib. He's a Muslim. But more than anything else, he's a human being with a conscience and goes and prevents a massacre. So as a result, at this point, the issue is, before we get to what sort of knowledge we are producing, the site of the production of that knowledge is the ruins of Gaza. Is not an abstraction in a studio in Al Jazeera or a campus in United States or anything else in Europe. The site, the place, location, makan, where the knowledge is produced is Gaza. Has to be start with Gaza, with countless bodies. We don't know how many people have been killed. It's still under the rubble. If we start with that, before we ask what sort of knowledge is produced, we have to ask who is producing knowledge, who's the person, and to whom is this person talking. I am no longer interested in convincing any person in position of power and authority in the United States or in Europe or in the Arab and Muslim world for that matter, that Palestinians have been wrong, because the whole world is witness to the atrocity. So as a result, we are at the threshold of a new way of thinking about the world because of this, what you rightly called epistemic earthquake.